My parents stole the $30,000 car my family bought me, leaving me to drive an unsafe wreck to my nursing job every day. They thought I'd never find out, but they underestimated my sister. We collected the receipts, built a case, and set a trap to expose them in front of everyone. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The smell of pine needles and roasting turkey was so thick it was almost suffocating. Christmas at my parents' house was always a production, a perfect, glittering performance orchestrated by my mother, Linda. Every ornament was placed just so, every dish was gourmet, and every person was expected to play their part. My part, as usual, was the grateful, overworked daughter. I was exhausted. My 1999 sedan, which I'd affectionately nicknamed the Clunker, had decided to celebrate the holiday by having its heater die. I'd just finished a string of 3 12-hour shifts at the pediatric ward, and I'd spent the 45-minute drive in the freezing dark, my knuckles white on the wheel, listening to a new, ominous grinding sound from the engine. At 31, I felt ancient. "Clara, darling, you look pale," my mother said as I walked in, kissing the air near my cheek. "Don't sit on the good sofa, your scrubs are probably covered in germs." I just smiled and nodded, changing into the sweater I'd brought. I was used to it. My sister, Emily, younger by 5 years and sharper in every way, gave me a sympathetic look from across the room, where she was cornered by our uncle. We sat for dinner, the table groaning under the weight of my mother's ambition. My father, Richard, a man who always looked like he'd just stepped out of a financial magazine, sat at the head of the table, beaming. "A toast," he said, raising his glass of expensive wine. "To family, to health, and to a prosperous new year." We all murmured our agreement. The meal was, as always, delicious. The conversation was, as always, loud. My Aunt Bet, my mother's sister and a woman who possessed an almost supernatural inability to keep her thoughts to herself, was holding court. "And a new car for Emily's promotion," Aunt Bet boomed, gesturing to my sister. "And Clara, goodness, that raise you got. We're all just so proud of you girls." I smiled weakly. The raise had barely covered the increase in my health insurance premium, but I'd made the mistake of mentioning it. Then Aunt Bet turned her full, beaming attention on me. The entire table, filled with aunts, uncles, cousins, and my grandparents, went quiet to listen. "Well, Clara," she said, her voice full of festive cheer, "I just hope you like the car we all pitched in for. Lord knows you deserve it, driving that death trap around." I laughed. It was a genuine, tired laugh. "Oh, Aunt Bet, that's sweet, but my death trap is still kicking. For now, anyway." The laughter died in my throat. No one else was laughing. In fact, every single person at the table, my aunts, my uncles, my grandparents, was staring at me, not with humor but with confusion. A horrible, prickling silence descended. "What?" I asked, the smile frozen on my face. Aunt Bet's own smile faltered. "What do you mean, what?" My Uncle David, my father's brother, looked over at my dad. "Richard, you were supposed to, did you not?" My father, Richard, who never missed a beat, suddenly looked like a fish out of water. He coughed, a loud, forced sound, and took a large sip of wine. "Bet, you've had too much eggnog. Who wants more turkey? Look at all this food." He was trying to change the subject, his voice too loud, too jovial. My mother immediately jumped in. "Yes, Richard, carve some more. Clara, darling, you barely have anything on your plate." But the spell was broken. The room was thick with a new, terrible tension. I looked from my aunt's confused face to my uncle's sudden frown. I looked at my grandparents, who were staring at my father with concerned, questioning eyes. Then, from beside me, Emily whispered. Her voice was so quiet I barely heard it, but it cut through the silence like a scalpel. "Clara," she whispered, her eyes wide with a dawning, sickening realization. "Wait, they never gave it to you." I turned to look at my parents. My mother was frozen, her hand hovering over the gravy boat, her face a mask of brittle panic. My father was staring at his plate, his jaw tight. "What car?" I said again, my voice no longer laughing. "What is she talking about?" My father wouldn't look at me. And that's when it all unraveled. The perfect Christmas, the perfect family, the perfect, glittering performance, it all shattered in that single, terrible moment of silence. The betrayal was so sudden, so complete, it felt like a physical blow. It was worse than the freezing car were. See than the exhaustion. It was a cold, sharp pain that started in my chest and spread, numbing me completely. The rest of the dinner was a blur. My father mumbled something about a delay at the dealership and wanting to get the best possible price. My mother chimed in about paperwork and wanting it to be a true surprise. Their explanations were flimsy, transparent, and they crumbled under the weight of the family's sudden, collective suspicion. No one ate the dessert. People made their excuses, a flurry of early mornings and long drives, their hugs for me suddenly tight with pity and their glances at my parents cold with questions. Emily and I drove back to my small apartment in her new, reliable car, the one she'd bought herself with her promotion bonus. I hadn't said a word since my father's stammered excuses. I just sat in the passenger seat, the silence in the car a roaring in my ears. "Clara, say something," Emily finally said, her voice gentle as she pulled into my parking lot. "What is there to say?" I whispered. My apartment building's flickering fluorescent light illuminated the rust spots on my car, parked in its usual spot. It looked pathetic. "He lied, Em. He lied right to all of them, to me." "I know," she said, her grip tightening on the steering wheel. "Mom, too. She knew. You saw her face." We sat there for another minute. "What are you going to do?" Emily asked. "Go to work," I said, my voice hollow. "I have a shift tomorrow. I have to sleep." "Clara." "I can't, Em. I can't think about it right now." She nodded, her expression grim. "Okay, but we are going to think about it, and we're going to do something. This isn't right." I went inside, locked the door, and slid to the floor of my tiny entryway. The shock was wearing off, and in its place, a cold, creeping dread was setting in. A car, they had all bought me a car. The next morning, I drove to the hospital in the clunker. The grinding noise was louder. I had to take the back roads, terrified that hitting highway speeds would cause a wheel to fly off. Every mile was a new wave of anxiety. I thought about the pediatric cancer patients I was on my way to treat, kids fighting for their lives, and felt a surge of guilt for being so wrapped up in my own problems. But the fear was real. I was a nurse. I knew how quickly a life could change, how fragile the human body was. A car accident in this thing wouldn't be a fender bender. It would be catastrophic. I had been saving for a new car. My savings account, which I'd been meticulously feeding for 2 years, had a little over $3,000 in it. It was a pathetic amount, but it was all I had after my student loans, rent, and the small checks I occasionally sent Emily when she was still in school. I'd been looking at used Corollas, trying to figure out if I could handle a $400 a month payment. The thought that my family, my whole family, had seen my struggle and tried to help, only for my own parents to steal it. The word felt like acid in my mouth. When I got home from my shift, exhausted and emotionally raw, I found my parents at my apartment. They had let themselves in with the spare key I'd foolishly given them. "Clara, honey," my mother said, bustling in my kitchen, rearranging my mugs. "We were so worried. You left in such a state. Your father and I want to clear up this whole silly misunderstanding," she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. My father was standing by my window, looking down at my car in the parking lot. "Your aunt really put us on the spot," he said, his voice clipped. "It was indelicate of her." "What misunderstanding, Dad?" I asked, my voice flat. "This car business," he said, turning. We were investing the money for you. A car is a depreciating asset, Clara. We were going to grow it, give you a real nest egg." I stared at him, a financial advisor. It sounded plausible if you didn't know the context. "Invested it," I said. "Aunt Bates said she hoped I liked the car, not the investment portfolio." Your aunt is a gossip who doesn't understand finance, Richard snapped, his patience clearly thin. We have it handled. Now your mother and I would appreciate it if you just let us handle it. You're making the whole family tense. I looked at my mother, who was nodding vigorously, her eyes pleading. He's right, honey. Your father knows best. We just want what's best for you. Trust us. Trust us. The words hung in the air. I thought about my drive that morning, the grinding, the fear. I thought about the $3,000 in my savings account. I see, I said. Well, I'm very tired. I have another shift tomorrow. They seemed relieved, mistaking my numb shock for compliance. That's our girl, my father said, patting my shoulder. Hardworking, now don't you worry your pretty little head about this. It's handled. After they left, I locked the deadbolt and leaned against the door, my heart poo. Ending, they had lied. They had lied to my face in my own apartment. They were so practiced, so smooth. And as I stood there, a cold, hard resolve began to form in my chest. They weren't just liars, they were thieves, and they had mistaken my exhaustion for weakness. They had forgotten one crucial thing: I was a nurse. I was trained to work long hours, to stay calm in a crisis, and to spot the smallest, most telling symptoms. And my sister was a paralegal. We were trained to notice details others missed, and we were about to start a full investigation. My parents, Richard and Linda, were masters of illusion. Our entire childhood was a carefully curated exhibit of upper-middle-class success. My father, the brilliant financial advisor, and my mother, the effortless hostess and community volunteer. Their house was immaculate, their cars were always new, and their Christmas parties were the talk of the neighborhood. Emily and I were their supporting cast. Emily, the bright, fiery one, and me, Clara, the responsible, quiet one. I was the one who, at 19, had deferred a semester of nursing school to work 2 jobs when my dad made a bad investment, and my mom's allowance was suddenly tight. I was the one who packed my own lunches, bought my clothes at thrift stores, and meticulously paid my own way, finally graduating with a mountain of student debt but a fierce, hard-won pride. I was the one who, when Emily got into her dream college, had taken on extra night shifts for 2 years, sending her $200 every month so she could afford textbooks and at least go to the movies. I never told our parents. I knew they would have disapproved, not because of the money, but because it teaches her bad habits, Clara. People need to be self-sufficient. This advice, like all their financial advice, now felt like a bitter joke. I remembered, vividly, the day the clunker had broken down on the side of the highway, just 6 months ago. I'd called my dad, crying and shaking, after a tow truck had finally gotten me to a garage. Well, Clara, what did you expect? He'd said, his voice impatient. You buy a cheap car, you get cheap results. This is a lesson in quality. I know, Dad, I stammered. It's just the repair is $900. I don't have it. The sigh on the other end of the line was a familiar one. It was the Clara is a disappointment sigh. You have to budget better, sweetheart, he'd said. You're a nurse, for heaven's sake. You make good money. Where is it all going? You can't just call me every time you have a problem. You have to learn to stand on your own 2 feet. I hadn't called him for help. I'd called him for comfort. I ended up putting the repair on a high-interest credit card, the same one I was still trying to pay down. Now I knew. At the exact same time he was lecturing me on budgeting better, he and my mother were sitting on a pile of cash, my cash, gifted by our family, that was meant to save me from this exact, terrifying situation. The betrayal wasn't just about the money. It was about the coldness. It was about the years of lectures, the patronizing tone, the constant implication that I was somehow less than because I wasn't as successful as they were. My mother was in many ways worse. Where my father was all hard-edged, cold logic, my mother was all soft, suffocating manipulation. She was the one who'd call me, her voice dripping with concern. Clara, dear, I was talking to Mrs. Henderson and she said her daughter, the lawyer, just bought a condo. Isn't that wonderful? It's just, well, this little apartment of yours, it's cozy, but don't you want more? She was the one who, when I'd proudly told her I'd paid off a student loan, had smiled thinly and said, "That's nice, honey. But you know, your father and I always say you have to spend money to make money. Look at your sister, she's already at a firm. You should really think about going back to school, getting your master's. That nursing, it's just so physical." They were a team. He was the CEO and she was the PR. His job was to make the money, or, apparently, steal it, and hers was to make it all look perfect. This car, this $30,000 Phantom, wasn't just a car. It was freedom. It was safety. It was a tangible thank you from the family who, unlike my parents, actually saw me. They saw the long hours, the exhaustion, the old, dangerous car. And my parents, in their arrogance, had looked at that love, that gratitude, that safety, and seen it as nothing more than a convenient solution to their own hidden problems. Their polished, disingenuous appearances, their vague but impressive talk of assets and portfolios, it was all a mask. I thought about them in my apartment, the practiced ease of their lies, the way they'd tried to turn it around on me, to make me feel small and silly. "Don't you worry your pretty little head." The condescension was so thick, I choked on it. No. I wasn't the pretty one. I wasn't the fiery one. I was the responsible one, and I was about to be responsible for tearing down their entire house of cards. The day after my parents' non-visit, I met Emily at a small, noisy coffee shop halfway between our apartments. The place smelled like burnt coffee and sugar, but it was anonymous. "Okay," Emily said, sliding a notebook and a pen onto the table. She hadn't even taken her coat off. She was already in paralegal mode. "Tell me everything they said, verbatim." I recited the conversation, my voice flat. The depreciating asset line, the investing it for you, the your father knows best. Emily's expression grew darker with every word. She was writing furiously in the notebook. "A depreciating asset," she muttered, underlining it twice. "He actually said that. The nerve, okay, he's a financial advisor. It's a plausible lie. It's designed to make us feel stupid and him feel smart. It's also complete nonsense." "What do we do, Em?" I asked, the weight of it all pressing down on me. It's Dad, how do we even?" "We don't," Emily said, her eyes flashing as she looked up from her notes. "We don't do anything about Dad. We build a case against Richard and Linda. We are no longer their daughters, Clara. We are the plaintiffs." The shift in her language sent a chill through me, but she was right. This was the turning point. The hurt that had been paralyzing me was finally, slowly, hardening into a cold, clear anger. I was done being a victim. I was ready to be a strategist. "Okay," I said, taking a deep breath. "Plaintiff, I like it. So, what's our first move, counselor?" A small, grim smile touched Emily's lips. "Our first move is to find out if there's even a case. The lie only works if the family believes it. Our family is emotional. They're probably all sitting at home right now feeling awkward and confused, and they'll want to believe Dad's investment story because the alternative is, well, it's this." "So we give them the alternative," I said, the fog clearing. "Exactly," Emily said. "We get proof. Not emotional, he said, she said. We get cold, hard, undeniable proof." The clever trap wasn't some elaborate scheme. It was, as Emily explained, simply the truth. We would create a paper trail so clear, so irrefutable, that no amount of smooth talking from our father could explain it away. We started with Aunt Bate. I called her from the coffee shop. "Oh, Clara, honey, I'm so sorry," she gushed, the moment she heard my voice. "I feel like this is all my fault. I just put my big foot right in my mouth. Your father called me, explained the whole investment thing. So smart, really. A car just loses value." "Aunt Bate," I interrupted, my voice firm, "I need your help, and I need you to be honest with me. When you gave the money, what did you think you were buying?" There was a pause. "Well, a car," she said, her voice small. "Your Uncle David and I, we sent $5,000. Richard said he'd found a wonderful, safe new SUV and that you deserved it." "He said SUV?" I asked, my blood running cold. So specific. Yes, a gray one, I think. He said he was at the dealership. Emily, hearing this, was already scribbling. Aunt Bate, I said, this is very important. How did you send the money? A bank transfer, honey. Why? Would you be willing to send me a copy of that transfer receipt? Another pause. Clara, what's going on? Your father. My father is lying, I said. The words came out and the world didn't end. He's lying to you and he's lying to me, but I can't prove it unless I have help. Please, Aunt Bate. I heard her take a shaky breath. Oh dear, oh my, that man. Of course, honey, of course. I'll forward the email to you right now. You tell me what you need. We were all so proud to do it. I hung up, my hand trembling. She's sending it, $5,000, e-transfer. The memo line said Clara's car. Boom, Emily said. There's our cornerstone. We spent the next 2 days in a blur. We created a shared spreadsheet, a grim digital ledger of our parents' betrayal. We divided the family list. Emily, with her paralegal confidence, took the tougher nuts, our stoic, no-nonsense uncles. I took the aunts and our grandparents, handling them with my gentle nurse bedside manner. The story was the same with every single call. Yes, we gave $3,000. Richard said he was getting a group rate. Here's the check image, dear. We wrote Clara's new car right on it. Your father told us it was a surprise. He said you'd be getting it on your birthday, but then at Christmas, well, we were just so excited. The amounts were staggering. $2,000 here, $5,000 there, $10,000 from our grandparents. Each call, a new wave of nausea. Each new line on the spreadsheet, another nail. By Wednesday, just 3 days after Christmas, we had it. We had bank statements, check images, and email transfers. The total was $31,500. My God, I whispered, staring at the final number on Emily's laptop screen. It's a felony, isn't it? Grand theft, embezzlement, fraud, Emily said, her voice devoid of emotion. Take your pick. We were sitting in her apartment, the spreadsheet glowing between us. We had the what, we had the how, but we didn't have the why. He's a financial advisor, I said, shaking my head. He makes good money. Mom doesn't work. They have the big house, the new cars. Why? Why would they risk everything for $30,000? That's the part that doesn't add up, Emily agreed. It's not retire to an island money. It's desperate money. It's plugging a hole money. So, I said, a new, terrible idea forming. We need to find the hole. We decided to confront them at their house. On our terms, we didn't call ahead. We drove over on Thursday evening, the folder with its 14 printed pages of evidence feeling heavy as a brick in my lap. Emily parked her car right in the driveway, blocking in my father's brand-new-looking Lexus. Let me do the talking at first, Emily said. You're the good cop. You're just hurt. I'm the bad cop. I'm the one with the questions. Got it? I nodded, my stomach churning. We rang the doorbell. My mother answered, dressed in a silk lounge set, looking surprised. Girls, what a nice. What are you doing here? We need to talk, Mom, Emily said, walking right past her into the foyer. I followed. Well, I was just about to make some tea, Linda said, her voice fluttering. Your father is in his study. We'll all talk, Emily said, heading straight for the study. Emily, don't just. But Emily was already pushing the door open. My father was at his large mahogany desk, not working, but staring at a stack of mail. He looked up, his face a mask of annoyance that quickly shifted to surprise. What is the meaning of this? He demanded. It means we're done, Dad, Emily said, dropping her bag by the door. My mother hovered in the doorway. Done with what? What's she talking about, Richard? Mom, Dad, I said, my voice shaking, but I forced it to be steady. We know about the car, and we know you've been lying to us. My father stood up, his face reddening. I will not be spoken to this way in my own home. We told you, Clara, it's an investment. It's being handled. Handled? Emily laughed, a short, sharp, ugly sound. Is that what you call it? She pulled the first page from the folder. It was Aunt Bates. You told Aunt Bate you were at the dealership. You told her it was a gray SUV. You invested $5,000 from her on December 1st, memo line, Clara's car. Was that the investment? My father's face went pale. And Uncle David, Emily continued, pulling out the next sheet. A check for $3,000, cashed on December 2nd. Memo, for Clara's new wheels. A very liquid investment, wouldn't you say? You girls, my mother whispered, her hand at her throat. You've been snooping, you've been talking to the family behind our backs. We've been fact-checking, I said, finding my voice. You told us a story, it didn't make sense, so we asked for clarification. My father, seeing the investment lie crumbling, switched tactics. He lunged for anger. How dare you? After everything we've done for you, we raised you, we fed you, we gave you everything. And this is how you repay us, by going around spreading gossip and trying to make us look bad. Make you look bad? I cried, the dam of my control finally breaking. I am driving a car that is literally falling apart. I am risking my life every single day driving to a job where I save children, and you stole from me. You took money that was gifted to me for my safety. How dare you? Clara, lower your voice, my mother shrieked, her eyes wild. The neighbors. I don't care about the neighbors. That's enough, Richard roared. He pointed a finger at Emily. You, this is you. You've always been a little snake, poisoning your sister against us. You think you're so smart with your little paralegal job, you don't know anything. He was lashing out, just as the blueprint had predicted. His threats were poorly executed, his lies obvious. He was a cornered animal. We know you took $31,500, Dad, Emily said, her voice lethally calm. We have the receipts. We have the bank statements. The investment story is dead. So now is the time for you to tell us the truth. Where is the money? My father stared at her, his chest heaving. My mother just started to cry, quiet, terrified sobs. It's gone, my father whispered. The admission sucked the air out of the room. Gone, I whispered. How is it gone? It's complicated, he said, sinking into his chair. The market, it's been a tough year. I had to cover some things. Cover what things? Emily pressed. Cover your Lexus payment, cover Mom's new kitchen. You don't understand. He yelled, it's none of your business. It's our money, our house. It was my money, Dad, I yelled back. It was gifted to me. It's gone, he said again, his voice flat, defeated. I'll pay it back. I need time. My mother ran to his side. He'll pay it back, Clara, I promise. It was just a loan, a temporary loan. But we knew they were still lying. A tough year and covering things wasn't the why, it was just another excuse. The real truth was still hidden, and we knew, standing in that perfect, expensive study, that we were only halfway done. We hadn't found the real whole yet. The confrontation left us shaken but resolved. My father's admission that the money was gone was a victory, but his vague, tough year excuse was a new, fortified wall. He and my mother immediately went on the offensive. They began calling the family, not to apologize, but to do damage control. Their new story was that they'd borrowed the money for a private family emergency, one so sensitive they couldn't possibly discuss it. They painted me and Emily as ungrateful and hysterical, two girls who had overreacted and were trying to air the family's dirty laundry. Your father is just so stressed, my mother cried to Aunt Bate over the phone, who reported the conversation to me immediately. And Clara, well, she's just not thinking clearly. She's so emotional. We'll pay it all back, of course. We just need a little time and understanding. It was a brilliant, manipulative move. It planted seeds of doubt. Had we overreacted? Was it a loan? It backfired spectacularly. Our family, who had wanted to believe the investment story, was now furious about the loan story. A loan? Uncle David bellowed over the phone to Emily. You don't take a $30,000 loan without asking. You especially don't take it from your own daughter who is driving a car with 200,000 miles on it. The wall of support for our parents crumbled. The relatives, now incensed, doubled down on their support for us. They weren't just forwarding receipts anymore, they were offering to come over and have a word with Richard. But we knew that a family shouting match wouldn't solve anything. We still needed the why. A tough year wasn't enough. "He's a financial advisor, Clara," Emily said, her brow furrowed as we sat in her tiny office at the law firm, working late. "Even in a tough year, he wouldn't be this desperate. This is something else. This is shame. He's hiding something he's ashamed of." "So, what's he ashamed of?" Emily's fingers flew across her keyboard. As a paralegal, she had access to public record databases. "Let's find out," she said. She started with the basics: property records, their house. "Okay, mortgage is current, no liens I can see." She searched for bankruptcies. Nothing. She ran a credit check. No, she couldn't do that. "What about his job?" I asked, pacing. "He's always so proud of his job." Emily typed in the name of his firm. "Richard L., Senior Vice President." She clicked a link, then another. Her face went very, very still. "What?" I said, rushing to her side. She pointed to the screen. It was the firm's website. An Our Team page. My father's smiling, professional photo was nowhere to be found. "No," I whispered. Emily was already typing his name into a broader search. Richard L., Financial Advisor, News. The result popped up. A small, dry-as-dust press release from a local business journal, dated 6 months ago. "Richard L., formerly of, has left the firm to pursue other opportunities." "He was laid off," I said, the words catching in my throat. He was fired 6 months ago. "And he's been pretending to go to work every day," Emily whispered, her eyes wide. The Lexus, the expensive dinners, the talk of new clients, all of it, a lie. This was the whole, this was the shame. We drove to their house the next day. We didn't need to confront them, we just needed to confirm. My mother was at her book club. We knew my father would be in his study, working. I let us in with my old key, which I hadn't yet returned. I felt like a burglar in my own childhood home. "Clara, what if?" "He'll be in the study with the door closed," I said. "He won't hear us." We didn't go to the study. We went to the garage. And there, sitting next to my mother's newish SUV, was a brand-new, gleaming black Lexus sedan. It still had the temporary plates in the window. He didn't, I breathed. He wouldn't, not another one. But then my eyes landed on the desk in the corner of the garage. The man's corner, as he called it, it was piled high with mail. Mail that, apparently, my mother never saw. I walked over, my feet feeling like lead, and I saw them. Red-stamped envelopes, white envelopes with clear plastic windows, final notice, past due, urgent. Dozens of them, from the mortgage company, from credit cards, and from a high-E. ND Collections Agency, a thick, formal-looking packet. I picked it up. My hands were shaking. I didn't even need to open it. Printed right on the front, visible through the window, notice of pre-foreclosure. They hadn't just used the money for a tough year. They hadn't covered some things. They had used the $31,500, my car, my safety, as a last-ditch, desperate payment to stop the bank from taking their house. They had stolen my future to save their facade. "Clara," Emily said, her voice small. I held up the letter. I couldn't speak. "We have it," Emily said, her voice hard as steel. "We have it all." We now had the irrefutable proof. The what, the how, and the why. It was time for the final confrontation. It was time to break the spell for good. The intervention, as Aunt Bate had begun calling it, was set for New Year's Day, 1 week after the disastrous Christmas dinner. It was to be held at my grandparents' house. My grandmother, a tiny woman with a spine of iron, had called my father and said, "Richard, you and Linda will be here at 2 p.m. We are going to clear the air as a family. This has gone on long enough." It was an invitation that could not be refused. Emily and I arrived an hour early. The whole family was there. Aunt Bate, Uncle David, our other aunts and uncles, and our grandparents. The mood was somber, funereal. We laid it all out for them in private. The spreadsheet, the bank transfers, the news of our father's job loss, and finally the pre-foreclosure notice. There was a long, terrible silence. My grandmother closed her eyes. My grandfather, a man of few words, simply stared at the letter, his face pale with a rage I had never seen. "That boy," he finally rasped. "That foolish, proud boy." "What do you want to do, Clara?" Aunt Bate asked, her voice thick with tears. It's your money, if you want us to call the police." I don't know," I whispered. I want them to admit it. I want them to stop lying." "Then they will," my grandmother said, her eyes snapping open. "They will." The doorbell rang at 2 p.m. Exactly. My parents walked in, their heads high. They were putting on a brave face. Richard was in a crisp suit. Linda was in a cashmere sweater set, a plate of store-bought cookies in her hand as a hostess gift. They looked like they were arriving at a party, ready to apologize for the misunderstanding and smooth everything over with their practiced charm. They stopped dead in the living room. It was not a talk, it was an ambush. The entire family was seated in a semicircle, waiting. "Well," my father said, his voice straining for cheer, "this is quite the reception." "Sit down, Richard." "Linda," my grandfather said, his voice leaving no room for argument. They sat, perched nervously on the edge of the sofa. We wanted to apologize," my mother began, wringing her hands. This whole thing, it's just a terrible misunderstanding. We borrowed the money, yes, but it was an emergency, your father, we just need a little time to." "Stop," I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through her nervous chatter. Everyone looked at me. I stood up, the thick folder in my hands. "Mom, Dad, we're done with the lies," I said. We know everything." I looked at my father. "We know you were laid off 6 months ago." The color drained from my father's face. My mother let out a small, strangled gasp. "We know you've been pretending to go to work every day," I continued, my voice gaining strength. "We know you used our car money, my car money, to pay off the collections agency," Emily said, standing beside me. I took the pre-foreclosure notice from the folder and slid it onto the coffee table in front of them. "And we know the bank is about to take your house." It was done. The final, terrible truth was out, laid bare in the middle of my grandparents' living room. My mother completely dissolved. She wasn't just crying. She was wailing, high-pitched, gulping sobs of pure, unfiltered shame. My father, my proud, arrogant father, just broke. He put his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. He didn't make a sound. It was the most terrifying, pathetic thing I had ever seen. The room was silent, save for my mother's hysterics. My grandfather stood up. He looked at my father, not with anger anymore, but with a deep, profound disappointment that was far worse. "You stole from your daughter," he said, his voice heavy. "You stole from your family. You lied to all of us, all for this." He gestured around at the air, at the invisible facade my parents had built. For pride. He looked at my mother. "And you, Linda, you let him, you enabled him, you watched your daughter risk her life in that car, all while you sat on $30,000 of her money." My mother just sobbed harder. "Richard," my grandfather said, "you will sell the house, you will sell the Lexus. You will liquidate whatever assets you have left. You will pay back every single cent to this family, and you will pay Clara first. You will pay her the $31,500 you stole from her." My father looked up, his face tear-streaked and sallow. I can't, the house." "You will sell it," my grandfather roared. "Or so help me, Richard, I will be the one to drive Clara to the police station. You will not bring this shame on us, and you will not ruin your daughter. Do you understand me?" My father, the big, successful man, looked like a small, terrified child. He nodded, unable to speak. My mother, realizing her performance was over, finally made her decisive, triumphant move. She stopped crying. She looked at my father with a coldness I'd never seen. You idiot," she hissed at him. "You ruined us." She stood up, grabbed her purse, and walked out the front door. The spell wasn't just broken, it was shattered. The downfall was as swift as it was brutal. The for sale sign went up on my parents' lawn the following week. The perfect house, the symbol of their entire lives, was sold in less than a month in a desperate, low-ball cash offer to avoid the bank's auction. My father's new Lexus was repossessed. My mother's SUV was sold. I watched, from a distance, as they moved into a small, sad-looking garden apartment complex on the other side of town. The performance was over, and the illusion had crumbled to dust. My father, stripped of his suit and his pride, got a job at a local tax prep office. My mother, stripped of her status, started working as a cashier at a high-end grocery store. They were social pariahs. The family didn't speak to them, and their friends, catching the scent of financial ruin, had vanished. True to my grandfather's command, the money was paid back. A check for $31,500 was delivered to me by my uncle, not my father. It was the full amount, restitution for what they had stolen. But the rest of the family, led by my grandparents, wouldn't hear of me waiting. "You've waited long enough," my grandfather had said, his voice gentle. The weekend after the intervention, my Aunt Bate and Uncle David had shown up at my apartment. "Get in," Aunt Bate said, her eyes sparkling for the first time in weeks. They drove me to a dealership. And there, with a big, ridiculous red bow on it, was a brand-new, slate-gray, incredibly safe SUV. We all pitched in," Aunt Bate said, tearing up. "Again, this time we paid the dealer directly. Your father he'll pay us back. But you, Clara, you are not driving that clunker one more day." I cried. I sat in the driver's seat, breathing in the new car smell, and I cried for the betrayal, for the loss, and for the overwhelming, powerful love of a family that had, in the end, shown up for me. Twice. My relationship with my parents is gone. I haven't spoken to them since the intervention. My father sent me a letter, full of excuses and self-pity. My mother sent me a text, "I hope you're happy." I deleted both. Emily and I, though, we're closer than ever. We've become a team. We have dinner once a week, and we've proven that together we can handle anything. She's the one who helped me pick out a new, better lock for my apartment door. As for me, I am free. I am free from their judgment, free from their toxic manipulation, and free from the constant, grinding anxiety of my old life. This morning, I got into my new, safe, reliable car. I drove to the hospital, the engine quiet, the heater on full blast. I didn't worry about breaking down. I didn't worry about the noise. I just drove. I felt warm. I felt safe. I felt, for the first time in a very long time, completely at peace. Justice had been served, the conflict was resolved, and I was, finally, vindicated.